On Capitol Hill, new hope for a deal to end the shutdown. It appears at this hour that the Senate may stay here in Washington through the weekend. It takes a lot to get them to do that, and it does tell us that lawmakers are discussing a deal to reopen the government. So, what could possibly have changed? Remember, this is the longest shutdown in history. It definitely could be the mass chaos, quote unquote, that Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy warns is coming to the nation's airports as millions of Americans prepare to travel for the holiday season. As soon as tomorrow, the FAA is going to start canceling flights at 40 of America's busiest airports. One source telling CNN that the Trump administration is weighing a proposal that would cut 4% of scheduled flights, and that for every day the shutdown drags on, they could increase those cancellations by an additional percent. United Airlines is preemptively canceling about 200 flights tomorrow, a similar rate of cancellations expected on Saturday and Sunday. Delta Airlines canceling about 170 of their Friday flights. The White House arguing that these cuts and the significant disruptions that they'll cause are not political. Here was the Transportation Secretary, Sean Duffy, earlier today.
People have asked me, why don't you find money for air traffic controllers? Like, that's the purpose of a shutdown. I don't have access to money. I can't find dollars to pay them because the Congress said there is no money. And so we can't break the law. And so I can't pay them. I'd love to, but I can't. And so the message is sit down, figure this out, open the government up, and let's not hold Americans hostage, especially when they want to travel.
So today, thousands of flight delays have been reported as the air traffic control towers go understaffed. The air traffic controllers have already missed one paycheck. Today, they received a second pay stub for $0. The president of the Air Traffic Controllers Union tells CNN that every day some controllers are permanently quitting their jobs, while others say they simply can't afford to get themselves to work.
They're calling in saying, I don't have enough gas to get to work, to their employer, to their supervisor and manager, and saying, what do you want me to do? They're not calling in sick. They're not calling in protest. They're calling in with real life situations. These are real people dealing with real life circumstances. And when you don't pay somebody for 37 days and say, hey, just keep showing up and do your best, people are going to have issues, and they're mounting daily.
There you go. All right, let's get off the sidelines, head into the arena. My panel is here, and we're going to get started with CNN aviation correspondent Pete Muntean and CNN's Manu Raju, who is on Capitol Hill for us. Manu, I actually do want to start with you just because the talks that are aimed at trying to reopen the government wrapped up in the last hour, and there does seem to be some significant a change in the chatter, shall we say. Is it the flights that's upping the ante? What's the latest from where you sit?
Well, there is enormous pressure on senators to reach a deal and end this very damaging shutdown that is having painful consequences each day for the American public. And the senators who are negotiating a potential compromise are keenly aware of all of that. Frantic negotiations have been occurring all week. They've been intensifying today. And the question on the table is whether Democrats can accept a compromise from their demands. Remember, initially at the outset of this fight, they had called for an extension of those expiring subsidies under the Affordable Care Act, saying it must be dealt with immediately, otherwise people will see their health care premiums rise. Well, as part of this emerging compromise, that would not be included as part of this plan to reopen the government. This funding plan would not include health care issues. That will be dealt with separately as part of a separate vote to extend the health care subsidies. But there is no guarantee that that separate vote could pass the Senate, the Republican House. The Speaker would not commit to putting it on the floor of the House or even get signed into law by President Trump. So will Democrats go along with that, not having any guarantee of that becoming law? That is a key question that I put to Democrats today. Some say this will be a capitulation. Others say it's time to cut a deal.
Settling for some kind of vague promise about a vote in the future on some indeterminate bill without any definite inclusion in the law, I think is a mistake.
And it would be a letdown to your voters?
I think voters would rightly see it as a surrender.
Yeah, but I mean, some people would think that this is a capitulation if you only agree to a standalone vote.
People need to understand how the Senate works. We have brought this issue as a major national issue from zero to a major factor, I think, in the last election. And I think we're going to continue to make it an issue as we approach the next election in the mid-year.
And the question was if enough Democrats agree with Senator Dick Durbin, the number 2 Democrat, that they've been able to make health care an issue, not necessarily make it a law. Will that be enough to sway? What would they need? 8 Democrats in total to advance legislation to reopen the government. So far, as we've seen time and time again, just 3 Democrats have sided with the Republican efforts to reopen the government with no conditions at all attached to it. But expect there to be a key moment tomorrow where there will be votes to try to reopen the government. Will Democrats come along to that, to saying yes on that bill? They just left a caucus meeting that lasted about 2 hours, Casey. I talked to many of them while they're leaving, many still non-committal about whether they think this is the path forward or whether they think the shutdown will drag on.
All right, well, keep us posted, Manu. Sounds like it could be potentially an interesting weekend up there. So, Pete Muntean, it's certainly going to be an interesting weekend for Americans across the country who are just trying to get where they're going. Can you help us understand kind of the scale, the magnitude, what people should be prepared for at the nation's airports if the government stays closed for the next few days?
We're talking thousands of flight cancellations. And as we speak, airlines are posting their flight cancellations for the next few days. Delta Airlines just told me it'll cancel about 170 flights starting tomorrow, mainly regional flights. United Airlines also told me it will cancel about 200 flights tomorrow. Then again on Saturday, same on Sunday. But we should reset here. This is now the most direct consequence of the government shutdown on air travel, and airlines were really blindsided by this mandate from the Trump administration. I'm told carriers were given less than an hour's notice that the FAA would order flight reductions nationwide starting tomorrow morning. And here's the reasoning from the Trump administration. Air traffic controllers just got that $0 pay stub, their second of this government shutdown. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says that has built stress into the national airspace system, and things have really reached a point where it is no longer safe to operate flights at full capacity. I want you to listen now to what FAA Administrator Brian Bedford said in this surprise announcement.
When we see pressures building in these 40 markets, we just can't ignore it, and we're not going to wait for a safety problem to truly manifest itself when the early indicators are telling us we can take action today to prevent, things from deteriorating. So the system is extremely safe today. It will be extremely safe tomorrow. And if the pressures continue to build, even after we take these measures, we'll come back and take additional measures.
Here are the details in this new directive. If there's no deal to reopen the federal government, the FAA is mandating airlines reduce flights by up to 10% at 40 of the country's busiest airports. Multiple airline officials now tell me the Trump administration will start this off at a 4% cut tomorrow, then ramp this up to 10% through the next week. Where will this be? And I want to show you the preliminary map of the airports. We're talking everywhere from Florida to Albuquerque to Anchorage, even some airports with no airline service at all, like Teterboro, New Jersey. I've been cautioned, though, that this list could change because this will likely include at least all of what's called the Core 30 airports. Those are the busiest, most operationally critical airports nationwide, though nothing final here, all preliminary. The FAA has not published a final order yet to airlines, and the airlines are really scrambling to adjust here. All 4 major U.S. airlines say they're complying with this directive and giving passengers ways to change their flights free of charge. Then there's this big reaction from Frontier Airlines CEO Barry Biffle. I've been going back to this all day because it's so unprecedented. He called the directive from the FAA unsustainable and, quote, "You cannot run the national airspace like this. This is not how a modern aviation system functions." And he even went a step further, suggesting to travelers to consider booking a backup ticket on another airline. It is such a competitive industry. You'll never hear that again from an airline CEO. So far, this has not been all that well received in the airline industry because this is not really a small tweak. Aviation's a multi-billion-dollar economic driver, and airlines are telling me they're dealing with this like they would deal with mass cancellations, like during a snowstorm.
Yeah, I mean, Pete, there may not be a lot of commercial traffic for you and me out at Teterboro, but I wonder what's going to happen if all those really wealthy people who fly those private jets in there start calling the president directly and asking him why the heck they can't land. You never know what's going to move him. Pete Muntean,
That's
Manu
right.
Raju, thank you very much for that. All right, our panel is here in the arena. CNN political analyst, national political reporter for Axios, Alex Thompson, CNN contributor, New York Times journalist and podcast host, Lulu Garcia-Navarro, CNN political commentator, former DNC senior advisor Sochi Hinojosa, and CNN senior political commentator Scott Jennings are all here. Thank you very much for being here today. Excuse me, Scott. How many flights are you taking in the next few days, and are you going to actually get on any of them?
I'm literally sitting here having a complete meltdown. I have to leave. I have to go to San Francisco, then I have to go to Chicago, then I have to go to Greensboro, then I have to go to Louisville, then I have to go to New York. Please, for the love of God, open the government. I don't mean to make this all about me, but do we really want America's favorite pundit stranded out there in the middle of the country?
Well,
I don't think so.
I don't think Trump wants you
I don't
stranded
believe
either.
so.
So this might be good for everybody if you were suffering.
Please.
Yeah, a direct to camera.
President
Donald Trump.
I think might help
Senate,
you.
I think the Senate is gonna. I think they're gonna vote on Friday. Maybe we'll get this thing opened up and I'll make all my engagements. The people out there need their Scott Jennings. I'm just saying.